It's a fact that the economy suffered a big blow due to COVID-19, which resulted in a drop in economic activity. Mitigation measures to assist businesses were most crucial at this time, and the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition says it used some funds from its industrial financing annual budget to support businesses in distress to the tune of 2 billion rands.
Part of that, we also have, the program is also open for manufacturers to retain job as well as to help them with working capital loan. What you have noticed is that during the crisis as well as during COVID, a lot of companies had to close. A lot of produce that they are manufacturing, they take time to reach the countries. But also we encourage the local manufacturers that given that there's limitation of products such as the mask, the sanitizers, we then have the COVID Funds Essential Support Program, which offers a loan of up to 2.5% interest.
Although devised with noble intentions, the relief measures were met with a degree of criticism due to red tape and corruption.
If we compare South Africa to many other countries in the world and the kind of assistance that government or the state then provided to their businesses, then I'm afraid South Africa is not comparing very well. We are talking about many billions of rands that were supposedly made available to smaller businesses. But if you scrutinize these sort of measures, then it becomes clear that the actual total amount of money that was actually spent in the support of business is really not that much.
Ruud points out that the fiscal support from government's coffers was simply not sufficient, particularly because of the country's debt levels. This and the fact that some support measures were not well crafted even from the private sector.
The guarantee by banks or guarantee to banks that banks can lend out money to businesses and that the state will stand in for some of these loans should they go sour. Banks simply did not have the capacity or they really wanted to lend out that much money. But I think businesses also did not want to borrow money under the kind of conditions that were set by the banks. So no, the real support for business in South Africa, the real support for the South African economy was certainly not sufficient. And the main reason for that has to do with the fact that the fiscal accounts have become unsustainable.
Mangole agrees that compliance for some businesses did prove to be a challenge, but says the department went out of its way to assist.
We're looking at, if a company say, I want to manufacture the mask, the first part we're looking at is that do you have an order? Do you have the market? And then we're buying the machines. So what I can say is that during the crisis, we have relaxed quite a lot of our requirements, given what the companies are actually dealing with. Part of the approach that we have looked at is that we have been proactive.
Unfortunately, the reality also is that there was a lot of corruption involved at various levels, as always. So this is a chicken-egg kind of situation. We can't really allow businesses to get money easier. We need to put measures in place because of corruption. But at the same time, putting all these measures and red tape in place makes it very difficult for businesses to get the actual money. And that's a really unfortunate position in which we find ourselves today in South Africa. Additionally to that is that the efficiency of the state is just not up to scratch. So apart from the measures, the reasons that I've just mentioned, I think that the state simply did not have the capacity to make sure that money reach the people that it was intended to reach.
The DTIC says during this period it has reprioritized 700 million rands of its budget, and with the upcoming mini-budget, additional support could be planned for it so that it is able to assist more businesses.
We are hoping for another additional support that we can get to revamp the economic recovery program, because as it is, the economic recovery program requires a multiple of support. It requires a tax allowance for your bigger investment. It requires a grant funding. It also requires a loan funding. So those blended facilities will then help both the big companies, the medium and the small companies with access to finance.
Ruud says with the changes in how the size of the economy is now being calculated, it means that the economy is now measured in greater terms. He says there will be an increase in collection because of this change.
The total amount of taxes that's likely to be collected in the current financial year is likely to be perhaps as much as 100 billion or even more than the original budgeted estimates. And the reason for that has to do mostly because of the very strong commodity cycle or commodity prices that we are currently experiencing. So the state is actually, with the fiscal finances, we're in very deep trouble, and it still is. There's a bit of a breather here because tax collections are doing much better. So that's the first question that I'm going to ask, and the first thing that I will be looking for: how much is the Minister of Finance thinking this overrun is going to be?
Ruth says he will be looking for answers from the Minister of Finance on how this money will be spent. Will it be used to reduce borrowing? Will it be allocated towards social spending? Or will it be set aside to support the economy broadly? Diabosito, SABC.